Is there anyone that eavesdrops on other conversations if you're like in a restaurant or whatever? Some of you raising your hand can't even hear. What are you talking about? I want to, but can't. No. Ashley accuses me of being an eavesdropper. Sometimes if we're in a restaurant, I'll say like something about something someone else said, and she's like, how did you even hear that or know that? So, eavesdroppers, it happens primarily in places like restaurants or other public places. We've been eavesdropping on Jesus. It's very easy and natural to assume that conversations with Jesus are gentle and reassuring and comforting. And often they are. We expect kind words and helpful answers and instantaneous relief or healing, and this often does happen. But not every conversation with Jesus feels that way. Some confuse us, some stretch us, and if we're honest, some of them just seem downright rude at times. Some of these conversations challenge what we tend to think about Jesus, even leaving us questioning whether Jesus is listening or if he even cares. In this series, we are listening in on personal, one-on-one conversations between Jesus and every type of person. And each conversation reveals something. It reveals something about who Jesus is, and it reveals something about the type of people that Jesus came to rescue. And when you read the conversation that we are in today, it makes us a little uncomfortable, because in this conversation, Jesus is initially just quiet, he's silent, and then the disciples are very dismissive of this lady, this desperate mom. And then when Jesus finally speaks, he almost comes across as rude to her. And yet by the end of it, Jesus looks at this desperate mom and says to her something he rarely says to anyone. Your faith is great. Great is your faith. So how does a conversation that begins with silence and resistance end with such a high commendation of this lady's faith? Well, let's listen in and we'll try to navigate this, figure out what Jesus is doing, and then draw some application for us. Verse 21 again of Matthew 15, and Jesus went away from there. We'll talk about what that means in a moment. And he withdrew to the district of Tyre and Sidon. In the section just prior to this encounter, Jesus confronts the Pharisees over focusing on external rituals and oral traditions and neglecting what really matters the most, which is the condition of our heart. And so Jesus has had this confrontation with these religious leaders. It's not his first one. It will not be his last one. And the religious leaders are deeply offended. They argue against Jesus. They resist Jesus. And as a result of this, Matthew simply states, Jesus went away from there. He left. You see, Jesus, as we talked about a few weeks ago, has the divine appointment. He has a divine appointment, in this case, with a desperate mother. And he will not be distracted by a religious debate with the Pharisees. So we discover that Jesus withdraws, the text says. He pulls back into this region of Tyre and Sidon. This region has a long history of animosity against Israel. It's an interesting and fascinating read about the historical context of this region against the Israelites. If you go way deep into the Old Testament, we learn that this region was the home of the wicked queen Jezebel. I often thought, if you're rolling into Tyre and Sidon, do they have on their sign like home of Jezebel? You know how sometimes you roll into a city and like a famous person's from there. Home of Jezebel. The Jewish first century historian Josephus says about this region that they were notoriously our bitterest enemies. So that kind of lets you know where they stood. This area represents an extreme form of paganism that would cause any practicing Jew to avoid it completely. But Jesus goes there, and he goes there intentionally. Just like he went through Samaria to meet the woman at the well. He goes into this region intentionally, where other Jews would avoid this region at all costs. The Gospel of Mark informs us that he enters into a house when he goes there to get away from the crowd, but he could not escape notice, is the phrase that Mark uses. He could not get away from the crowd. Throughout the Gospels, we learn that broken and sinful people want to be near Jesus. They want to come to him. They want to be where he is. And that statement alone, that very broken and very sinful people are drawn toward Jesus and want to engage Jesus and have conversation with Jesus, that statement alone says something about who Jesus is. And people are drawn to him. The people that we think should be repelled by Jesus or turned away by Jesus because of their life or because of their unrighteousness or whatever moral scale we're talking about, these are the people that when Jesus was on earth were actually drawn to who he was. Verse 22, and behold, that's a attention-grabbing word, behold, a Canaanite woman from that region came out and was crying, have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David. My daughter is severely oppressed by a demon. Jesus immediately encounters a desperate mom from that region. We can't miss that. A woman from that region whose daughter is possessed or being oppressed by an unclean spirit. And so into this narrative enters a helpless and desperate parent, a mother. There's even something more unique about it being a mom. Like us dads kind of get it, and we have sympathy, and in those moments of desperation with your children, you feel that as a dad. But there's something unique about the baby coming out of the mom, right? That mother-child relationship that's unique even to the dad, that a mom feels a level of desperation that even a father can't identify with. And we've all had those moments of parents, those moments as a parent where you felt hopeless or desperate. When my firstborn, Kaylee, was born, when she was just an infant, like a newborn infant, they learned that there was something wrong with, I'll just say it politely, her bowels or something wrong. And long story short, she was going to have to go through a pretty extensive surgery at just a couple of months old. And I'll never remember that, and I'll never forget that night before the surgery, holding her, and she was so tiny and had tubes coming out of her. They couldn't get anything into her veins on her arms or legs. So they had to stick it right in the soft spot on her head. Man, that'll do something to your heart as a parent. And I remember that last night, like holding her, thinking, what is going to happen to this newborn? It's her first child, right? You're already like, don't know what you're doing. You're juggling everything and the emotions and the fears and all that of like, I got to take this kid home with me and take care of it. Like how crazy is that thought? And so now you're holding this newborn and just that feeling of absolute desperation as a parent that there's nothing I can do. And that's how this mother feels. The hurt, the pain, the hopelessness, the desperation. It's interesting here that Matthew calls her a Canaanite. Matthew does not need to call her a Canaanite at this point in first century. This is a kind of an antiquated term that wasn't really used anymore. And so Matthew's using this word intentionally. He's calling her a Canaanite because there's history behind that word. And if you dive into Israel's history, you learn that the Canaanites were some of Israel's worst enemies. They were idolatrous and they were evil. Matthew is writing his gospel primarily to Jewish people to convince them that Jesus is the Messiah. Every gospel writer kind of had the audience that they were writing their story of Jesus to, directed toward. For Matthew, it was Jewish people, a Jewish audience. And so Matthew uses this phrase, a Canaanite, intentionally. He brings history into the story. Remember the Canaanites. Remember the bitter enemies. Remember the people that the Israelites considered idolatrous and pagan and enemies. And they were constantly in squabbles and fights and battles with the Canaanites throughout their history. So again, Matthew's bringing history into the story because this woman represents generations of hostility, generations of pagan worship. She represents everything that Israel hated, everything that Israel believed was outside of God's covenant. She was Gentile, she was pagan, she was radically unclean. She has no resume, no credentials, no religious standing. But she's desperate. And what we learn about being desperate is that being desperate is not a weakness in God's kingdom. Being desperate is not a weakness in God's kingdom. Being desperate is a place where Jesus has deep compassion and meets people. She cries out, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me." This phrase, Son of David, is a Jewish phrase. This is her recognizing Jesus as the Messiah. This is a pagan, Canaanite, Gentile woman from an idolatrous country recognizing Jesus is the Messiah. "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me." Now, if you know the story of Jesus, you might be thinking this is where Jesus shows deep compassion for this desperate mother, and he steps in and he heals her little girl. But that's not how this scene plays out. 23, but he did not answer her a word. He's quiet. He did not answer her a word. The disciples had an opinion. The disciples came and begged him, saying, "Send her away, for she's crying out after us." But he did not answer her a word. Man, at face value, this may be one of the harshest sentences in all the Jesus encounters that we will explore. A desperate mom crying out, and Jesus refuses to even answer her. Jesus, who heals and welcomes and loves and forgives and embraces, he says nothing. Well, she keeps crying out. She's crying out until the disciples, they finally have something to say. The disciples speak up. By the way, they speak up not for her, but against her. They go to Jesus and they, strong word from Matthew here, beg him. They beg him, "Send her away." There's a lot of reasons why they want to send her away. Many of them, the things we just talked about. She's a Gentile, she's a pagan, she's outside of Israel. Send her away. There's some more practical reasons why they want to send her away. It's like, "Will she just please leave us alone? She's driving us crazy." Jesus, send her away. This woman who's desperate and in need and hopeless, right? She's at that place in life. She's begging for help and mercy. And the disciples' attitude is, "Jesus, send her away." If I'm being honest with you, I find myself acting way more like the disciples most of my life than I do Jesus here. That when the desperate and the hurting come to me, that I'm more prone to be like the disciples. Leave me alone, keeping them at arm's distance. You know why? Because it gets sloppy, and it gets messy, and it gets uncomfortable. And I know I'm more drawn toward the attitude of the disciples here than I am toward the heart of Jesus. They just want relief. They want quiet. They want peace. They want order. They want, here it is, comfort. And she's everything against that. She wants mercy and relief. So what do you do when Jesus is silent? What do you do when he's quiet? Do we assume rejection? Do we assume Jesus wants nothing to do with me? Do we walk away? A lot of people walk away when Jesus is quiet, when they don't get the answers they want or feel like they deserve, they walk away. What do we do when Jesus is quiet? Do we keep pleading? Do we keep begging? Do we keep listening for the answer? Do we keep leaning in? Do we keep trusting his grace even when he is quiet? Well, Jesus finally speaks. But what he has to say again catches us off guard. He answers, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Who is this lady? She's a Gentile. She's outside the house of Israel. And when Jesus finally speaks, he does not even address her. He says to the disciples, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Like, for again, face value here, how rude, how dismissive, how cruel, how exclusive is Jesus being here. Now, let me break something here to you that's very important. We have to remember this is not a statement of rejection that Jesus is giving. This is a statement of order. Let me explain what that means. God's redemptive plan, as you read the unfolding of God's redemptive story, God's redemptive plan came first through Israel. It came through the covenants God made to Abraham. It was God choosing Israel from all the nations of the world. This is my people. These will be my people. And God began his redemptive story that started in Genesis 3 with the rebellion. And when God said, that there's going to come one day someone who will strike the serpent, right? That kind of snake stomper image that started in Genesis 3. It was from there that God began to make covenant promises with the people of Israel and continued to build relationship with the people of Israel throughout the first part of God's redemptive plan. And so Jesus here is not talking about exclusion, that the Gentiles will be excluded from God's plan. He's talking about order, that God's redemptive plan came first through Israel. But that first does not mean, here it is, only. It means first. The question is not whether Jesus has mercy. The question of the story is whether she trusts him enough to keep believing and asking even when he seems silent and dismissive. Verse 25, notice her movement here. But she came and knelt before him saying, and how desperate are these three words? Lord, help me. Lord, help me. Again, key to the story, notice her movement toward Jesus. She humbles herself before him. She kneels before him. His silence does not push her away. It does not repulse her. His resistance does not stop her. His words do not harden her. She moves closer. She leans in. She postures her heart. She kneels before him, and her prayer gets simpler. No arguing, no explaining, no begging, just three simple words. Lord, help me. And here we see a raw, simple, desperate faith. We've been there at times, right? We don't have the words anymore. We don't have the explanation. And we don't have the way to figure it out. We don't even know what to pray anymore. And the cry of our heart is only, Lord, help me. I got nothing else. Lord, help me. Again, this seems to be where Jesus will meet her, right where she is in this desperate place. This seems like the time that Jesus will meet her where she is and bring healing and redemption and hope. But again, in this story, in this conversation, we're left a little confused. And if, again, we're being honest, a little put off by the response of Jesus here. Look at 26. And he answered her, it is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. Throw it to the dogs. Like if you're just reading this, it's like, wait, did Jesus just call her a dog? And I'm not talking about like D-A-W-G, like, what's up, my dog? That's not what we're talking about here. Did Jesus throw her a dog? A dog in this culture, unclean scavengers that work the streets of Jerusalem. That's not like your little fluffy, puffy, whatever you call a dog that you've got at home that wears clothes and sunshades and you push around in a stroller. That was not dogs in the first century. It's not even my, family member dog that kind of gets his way. He's getting older in life, so now suddenly Ashley wants to let him lay on the couch, where in the past that was off limits, but now he's like standing at the couch begging, and it's like, oh, it's your last season of life. Get on up here. Let me help you get up because you're old. It's not even that kind of dog that's staying in the house. Our dog lives in the house with us. I mean, the idea of him being an outside dog, right? No possible way. I grew up with outside dogs. All our dogs now inside dogs. It's like unfathomable to me that Toby would live outside. And so it's not even that, right? It's not even the inside family pet dog. Dogs, first century Jerusalem, lived in the streets. They were scavengers. They got by on whatever they could get. And so this was a term of reproach. Jews often considered Gentiles ignorant, godless, pagan idolaters, and a term that they would use for them were they were dogs. So what's going on here? Jesus is basically saying, we don't give our bread to dogs. These are some tough words. Now, let's remember our context to grasp what's going on. Jesus is using a metaphor to point out Israel's priority in God's redemptive story. The children in this phrase is Israel. The bread here is God's mercy. This statement is not about her worth or value. It is about the timing of how God's redemptive plan is unfolding. That he came first to Israel, God's people, but not just to Israel. Jesus is not questioning her dignity or value or worth or just dismissing her as a dog. He is challenging whether she will continue in this moment to trust his goodness even when she feels resistance. Does she believe that God's mercy is as big as she claims? Remember how she came to Jesus. A Gentile, a Canaanite woman is the phrase that Matthew uses. And she comes to Jesus and says, Lord, Son of David, Messiah, have mercy on me. Well, that's a claim. That's a claim about who she believes Jesus is and what he will do. And Jesus pushes her. Jesus challenges her. Do you really believe that God's mercy is as big as you claim? Do you really believe that his mercy is abundant enough for you? With all these obstacles that I'm putting up, this resistance that I'm showing, the silence you're going through, do you really believe that God is good? That he will hear you. 27, this is the turning point in the conversation. She said, yes, Lord. Yet even the dogs, even those outside of Israel, eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table. She does not argue. She does not demand. She does not pout. She agrees with Jesus. She simply trusts that his mercy is enough for her. Listen, she's not asking for a seat at the table. She's asking for crumbs because she believes that crumbs are enough. That crumbs are enough. I mean, man, we can just go right back to the dog illustration here, right? If you've got that dog that lives in your house, you know that in their minds and their actions, crumbs are enough. Toby had a surgery recently. If you've seen Toby a few months ago or years ago, he had this big growth that came over his eye and kept getting bigger and bigger until finally the vet was like, we probably need to take this thing out. I'm like, are you sure? He's like a month from dying. Like, we need to really take this. So, but we agreed, spent the money, like whatever last time he's got, hopefully a few years. Maybe these last few years he can at least see clearly. And so he goes through this major surgery. He's like got all this meds. He's kind of out of it. And, he's laying around the house. He's supposed to be wearing those stupid cone things. He doesn't want to wear his, of course. So he's doing all this, and then we're eating, and guess where he's at? He's up trying to we don't let like Toby at the table when we're eating, as to stay right outside the kitchen. But he's right there at his line, like trying to come across the line, like hoping for what? A crumb to fall. Like, dude, you just went through the equivalent of, triple bypass open heart surgery. Go lay down. Don't worry about the crumbs. We'll bring you something. But that's how dogs are wired. They want the crumbs from the table. And this lady is saying, like, I don't get a place at the table. I'm not asking to be grafted into the Jewish community here. What I'm saying is that crumbs are enough. That God's provision is not limited. And guess what? She's right. That he came for all people. And her response displays the type of humility and faith that is needed to enter into God's kingdom. Jesus, I just want a crumb from the table of your mercy. Just a small portion. A crumb. A crumb of your mercy is enough. And can I just pause here to say that desperate for crumbs of mercy is the proper heart attitude to feast at the table of his goodness. Verse 28. Then Jesus answered her. After all this happened here. After the desperation, the plea, the silence, the disciples, the metaphor of dogs, after all of this, after her kneeling, after her saying, I just want crumbs, crumbs are enough. I'm not looking for a seat at the table. The crumbs of mercy are enough for me. After all of this, then Jesus answers her, O woman, great is your faith. Be it done for you as you desire. And her daughter was healed instantly. Only two people in the Gospels hear this phrase, great is your faith. A Roman centurion who comes to Jesus, again, son at home, pleading for Jesus to heal. A Roman centurion, don't miss that context. Roman army, pagans, outsiders. They were the rulers and kings over the Jewish people at this time, hold them in captivity. A Roman centurion and a Canaanite, a Gentile woman. Only those two people in all of the Gospels receive this phrase from Jesus. Great is your faith. Both outsiders, both desperate, both believing Jesus can heal without even seeing the child, seeing the son, seeing the daughter, both in desperate need of crumbs of mercy. You see, in this moment, Jesus is her only hope. And so it is in Jesus and in Jesus alone that she places her faith. She doesn't have the spiritual credentials. She doesn't have the lineage of being a part of the covenant community of God. She doesn't have the history of following Jesus. She's the opposite in every way. We don't always recognize Jesus is all we need until Jesus is all we have. Until he is our only hope. And that's where she is. That sometimes we only recognize I need Jesus desperately when he's all we have to cling on to. I think sometimes in life we got so much other stuff we're trying to hold on to that we don't have a desperate need for Christ in our lives. He's kind of this sidecar buddy, on the side that I call on when I need him. But when you're at a desperate place in life and he's all you got, then you recognize our desperation for him, our only hope. And that's how this story ends, as we would expect it with Jesus. Her daughter is healed instantly, from a distance, by mercy alone. The great reformer Martin Luther said about this story that she took Jesus at his word, and Jesus treated her not as a dog, but as a child. So, what does a story like this one teach us about Jesus? A couple of things and we'll wrap up today. This story reminds us that Jesus is better than immediate answers. He's greater and he's better than just immediate answers. We like immediate answers. We like to know. We like to be in control. We like to kind of know what the answer is and how we're going to figure it out. But this mother does not get quick relief. She does not get gentle words. She does not get immediate clarity. She does not get instant healing. What she gets, don't miss it, is Jesus. And he is enough for her. Jesus is not committed to making your life easier. I think that's one I need to repeat. Jesus is not committed to making my life easier, to making me comfortable. That's not his goal for me. That's not his aim for me, to make my life better. What he is committed to is deepening my trust in him, is deepening my faith in him, is deepening my need for him. He is committed to deepening our trust in him. And guess what? At times, that means that Jesus withholds answers from us. That means at times it seems like Jesus is really quiet. At times that means sometimes life treats us in a way that it seems like maybe God is being a little harsh with me right now, a little rude with what I want. Because his commitment to us is to deepen our trust in him, our faith in him. And so there's times he withholds answers so that we might, cling more tightly to who he is. It's easy to trust he is good when everything in life is going my way. The question for us is, am I trusting that he is good and gracious when life is beating the heck out of me? When life has got me down, will I trust him? When I'm praying desperately for something and, man, God seems really quiet right now. Or I prayed for this and instead this happened. You ever been there? I prayed for relief, praying that God would give me some relief in life, and then it just seemed like I got piled on top of it. Will I trust he's good in those moments? Will I cling to him? And that's why this truth is so important, that Jesus is better than immediate answers. How do I know that? Because the cross and the resurrection guarantee that his silence does not mean that he is absent or removed. I don't have time to chase this. But why was Jesus quiet in the end, right? He's standing before Pilate, and they're heaping all this stuff on him, making all these accusations, things that obviously were not true about Jesus. Guess what? He had the evidence to be able to bring people up and say, these things aren't true. Let's talk to these people that really know me. Let's bring all the people in that I've healed and see if these accusations are true. Jesus could have defended himself because he was innocent and sinless and innocent of all the accusations they were making. Instead, what did he do? He sat in silence. And he allowed the accusations to happen. He allowed them to pile on him and trash on him and heap on him. And he took it in silence. And even Isaiah prophesied this, didn't he? That he was going to be like a lamb that was silent, being brought before the shearers. And Jesus, in his silence, taking him to the cross through the resurrection, guarantees that in my moments of silence that I can trust that he is still good and faithful. That he's better than immediate answers. How about this one? Jesus invites, we see this over and over in this series, Jesus invites the unworthy to come. He invites the unworthy to come to him. This conversation does not end with some kind of rebuke. Why are you coming to me, you Canaanite? This conversation does not end in some kind of life lesson. This conversation does not end in a disregard for her desperation. It ends with healing and affirmation. Great is your faith. And it reminds us that the gospel announces you do not clean yourself up to come to Jesus. You come to Jesus because you can't clean yourself up. You need him. Jesus does not say to her, come back when you are worthy to come. Come back when you belong. Come back when you have it figured out. Come back when you don't just desperately need something, woman. Come back at a different time. No, he says to us, come, all you who are what? Weary. Life has beat you up. You are down and don't have answers. Come to me, you who are weary, and I will give you rest. When Jesus says, come when you are weary, that implies that we come when we are on our last rope, when we don't have it figured out, when we're tired, when we're desperate, when we're down, when we're sinful. That's when we come, and that's when he meets us and gives us rest. This is so important. Faith is not confidence in my ability to believe enough and trust enough. We try to make it that. We try to make it, I've got to believe a little harder. I got to trust a little harder. Like God's waiting for us to say, well, if you'll exercise a little more faith, then I'm going to give you what you want and need. That He's somehow pulling us along like, try a little harder, Devin, and then I'll meet you there. That's not what faith is. Faith is confidence that Jesus is enough for me. Even when my faith is weak, that He will meet me where I am. Faith is believing and confident that what Jesus has done for me, that when I have a lack of faith, He will still meet me there. Because His faith is enough for my weak faith. How about this one? Mercy is not earned. It is an overflow of His goodness. I love that. This woman never argues her worth. She never plays the victim here. She never demands her rights. She never lists her qualifications. She simply trusts that Jesus gives her more mercy than she deserves. She calls it crumbs. That the crumbs from the table are more than enough for me. Man, that's the gospel, isn't it? That we don't earn bread. We receive mercy. And on the cross, Jesus becomes the rejected one. He becomes the outsider. He becomes the one who is treated like a dog so that outsiders like us can be adopted as children. Crumbs of mercy are enough for us because Jesus gave Himself fully on the cross for us. Mercy is not earned. It is an overflow of His goodness toward us. And then we'll end with this. Jesus is the true bread. He is the bread. He called Himself the bread, didn't He? Jesus is the true bread that we need the most. Here's the beauty of this attitude that she has in light of the abundance of the gospel. She asked for only crumbs, but Jesus gives her more than what she needs or deserves. She pleads for crumbs, but she gets the whole loaf. That Jesus is the bread of life. She gets everything. He's the bread of life who was broken on our behalf. And when we partake of the bread of life, we are granted the gift of eternal life. That Jesus meets us in our desperation, and He provides so much more than quick answers and easy fixes. He provides Himself. And His promise is that those who eat this bread, they will never go hungry again. That crumbs from Jesus are enough because Jesus is enough. But grace says crumbs is not all you get. You get everything. So are you in need of a touch from Jesus today? She was in desperate need of a touch from Jesus. Are you in need of a touch from Jesus today? The gospel says, come to Him. He is enough for you. And for those who are invited to sit at His table, for those who humble themselves and come, here is the beauty of the gospel. Here is what we discover. His grace is not provided in mere crumbs. His grace is provided in abundance, in overabundance. Paul said it is more. It is lavished on us. It is lavished on us in abundance. You know why? Because that's just the kind of God He is. That we plead for crumbs and He gives us everything. He gives us Himself. He gives us the whole loaf because He is the true bread that we need the most. And so we come to Him knowing that He will meet us in our most desperate moments with more than enough. Let's bow our heads.